It was a typical day at school when they first noticed him. A kid with scuffed up $5 shoes, sitting quietly in the back, trying his best to blend in. The laughter started softly, then grew louder as the whispers spread. They mocked his shoes, cheap, worn out, and nothing like the flashy brands they proudly wore. To them, it was a joke. But to him, it was a reminder of everything he didn't have. The humiliation stung, but it also sparked something inside him. Years later, when those same kids were working their corporate jobs, wearing the latest brands, he was already on a different path. He had set his sights on something bigger. That mockery wasn't just a moment of cruelty. It was the fuel he needed to ignite his drive. He started small, just like his shoes had been. But this time, his shoes were about to change everything. What they didn't know was that he had a plan. A plan to not just rise above their laughter, but to build an empire that would make them regret every word. Fast forward to today, and that $5 pair of shoes led him to own the very company that makes the shoes they wear now. The tables had turned. But the story doesn't end there. The journey from being laughed at to owning the company wasn't easy, and it came with even bigger challenges. Stay tuned to find out how he did it. After high school, things didn't magically get easier. In fact, they got harder. He didn't have the connections, the money, or the support that others seemed to have. But that didn't stop him. He worked every odd job he could find, washing dishes, flipping burgers, anything to make a little cash. And in every spare moment, he would study. Not just the basics, but the ins and outs of business, marketing, and fashion. His goal wasn't just to wear the shoes they laughed at, it was to create the shoes that everyone would want to wear. Years of hustle led him to a small apartment in the city where he started building his idea from scratch. He knew there were gaps in the footwear industry, places where the big brands weren't paying attention. He took note of the small details that made the difference. What made a shoe comfortable? What made it stand out? And most importantly, what made people willing to spend money on it? His shoes weren't just a product, they were a statement. They represented everything he had fought against and everything he had built in the process. But building a brand from the ground up isn't easy. Every step forward seemed to come with 2 steps back. Competitors laughed, investors doubted, and many told him he was wasting his time. But the taste of success was within reach. Little did they know, the very people who mocked him would soon be the ones looking up to him. But first, he needed to make his move. As the years went on, the struggle to get noticed became his daily battle. There were nights he barely slept, working until his eyes burned from exhaustion, perfecting his designs, negotiating with suppliers, and trying to get investors to see his vision. His shoes were innovative, affordable, yet stylish and durable, made for people who wanted quality without the outrageous price tag. But convincing others to see that was another story. The big names in the industry had already claimed their territories, and he was just another nobody with a small startup. Despite the odds, he kept pushing. He understood the market, the customers, and what they needed. But there was always one big obstacle: credibility. No one took a brand seriously without a reputation, and he had none. One of his early attempts at marketing was a disaster. His first campaign fell flat, and it almost cost him everything. He was starting to question whether he was wasting his time when a breakthrough came from an unexpected direction. A famous influencer, known for his bold fashion choices, posted a picture wearing a pair of his shoes. It wasn't a sponsored post, the influencer simply liked them. That one picture turned everything around. Sales spiked, and his small team couldn't keep up with the demand. But the challenge wasn't over. As his brand grew, so did the competition. The big names started noticing him, and they didn't take kindly to the idea of a newcomer threatening their empire. Now they were ready to fight back. As his brand soared, the pressure only mounted. The success he had worked for years to achieve was finally within his grasp, but it came with new challenges. The big players in the footwear industry weren't just watching, they were making moves. First, they began copying some of his designs, subtly adjusting them just enough to avoid any legal issues. The market was flooded with knockoffs, and it became harder to stand out. Customers started asking whether his shoes were really as unique as they once thought. On top of that, larger investors began circling, eager to buy out his company, claiming it was the only way for him to survive in a cutthroat market. He knew what they wanted: to take control and squeeze out the originality that had made his brand special. The thought of selling out wasn't an option. He'd fought too hard for this. But now the stakes were higher than ever. The pressure started to get to him. His team was small, and they were all stretched thin. They were trying to keep up with production while maintaining the quality that had earned them a loyal following. But they were running on fumes, and he could see the exhaustion in their eyes. It was clear that a big decision was looming. Would he be able to outsmart the giants of the industry, or was it too late for him to make a stand? The final blow came when one of the largest companies in the industry sent him an offer he couldn't ignore, an offer that could change everything. The offer came at a time when he was at his lowest. The proposal from the giant corporation was tempting: millions of dollars, the chance to expand faster than he ever dreamed, and the promise of unparalleled resources. But as he sat there, staring at the contract, something didn't sit right. It wasn't just the offer. It was the way they had approached him, with an air of superiority, like they were doing him a favor. The words on the paper seemed too clean, too perfect. He knew this deal would mean giving up control. Everything he had fought for would slip from his hands. Just as he was about to make his decision, a bombshell dropped. One of his own employees, a trusted member of his inner circle, had been approached by the same company. They offered him a cushy role in exchange for insider information about the business. The betrayal cut deep. Not only had they been trying to buy him out, but now they were attempting to turn his own team against him. The realization hit hard. He wasn't just fighting an industry giant. He was fighting a war from all sides. The people closest to him had been seduced by the allure of money, and now his own company was on the brink of collapse. He had to act fast, but the clock was ticking, and every decision seemed to bring him closer to losing everything he had built. It was clear now. This battle wasn't just for his company, it was for his soul. The night before his deadline, he made the decision. He wasn't going to sell out. He wasn't going to let the giants dictate his fate. But he also knew he couldn't take on the entire industry by himself. As dawn broke, he gathered his closest team members, the ones who hadn't been tempted by the promises of big money. Together, they hatched a plan, one that would hit the industry where it hurt the most: their reputation. Instead of accepting the buyout offer, he released an open letter to the public. In it, he called out the industry's tactics, how they stole designs, undermined smaller companies, and manipulated the market. The letter went viral, sparking outrage among consumers who were tired of the same old tactics from the corporate giants. But that wasn't all. He also announced that his brand would begin a collaboration with independent designers, creating a collective that would disrupt the whole industry from within. The response was overwhelming. Orders flooded in, and his loyal customer base rallied behind him. He wasn't just a small brand anymore. He had become a symbol of defiance, a beacon for anyone who believed that originality and hard work should prevail. But the biggest surprise came when his former employee, the one who had been seduced by the offer, came to him with a confession. They had rejected the corporate offer and handed over all the inside information, exposing the industry's dirty secrets. The giants were exposed, and his small company had just turned into a movement. The fallout from the industry's exposed corruption was immediate and profound. The public backlash was swift, with several of the larger companies facing lawsuits, accusations of unethical practices, and plummeting stock prices. But for him, it wasn't about the victory over the giants. It was about what came next. His company, once a small, scrappy brand, was now a symbol of resilience and creativity. He hadn't just built a successful business, he had sparked a movement. Independent designers, artists, and even consumers who had long felt overlooked all rallied to support his cause. Sales skyrocketed, but it wasn't the financial gain that mattered most, it was the message. You didn't need deep pockets to make an impact, just determination and the will to fight for what was right. His company's focus shifted. They started investing in communities, helping small entrepreneurs with mentorship, and supporting ethical production methods. It became more than just shoes, it became a platform for empowerment. The once trusted employee who had betrayed him became a key part of his team again, not out of obligation, but out of genuine remorse and a shared vision for the future. Together, they built something that no corporate giant could ever replicate, a legacy rooted in authenticity and purpose. Looking back, he could hardly believe how far he'd come, from being laughed at for his $5 shoes to becoming a symbol of what can happen when you refuse to back down. The world had changed, and so had he. The fight was worth it.